Hey, I'm Rick Watson, and this is Humaning, a podcast where I chat to everyday humans about life. Not just the highlight reels, but the doubts, the fears, and the repeating patterns that influence us all. Humaning for me is about being able to sit in the thick of it with a little bit of presence and a little bit of curiosity, but still have a willingness to be shaped by what we learn along the way. Scott Ellis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, mate. Good to be here.
Every time I start a podcast, I feel like I'm embracing more of my radio voice than ever before. Scott Ellis, welcome to the podcast.
There wasn't much of a lead in. I just had that moment where I thought, oh, we're on.
Oh, yeah, we're on.
Now I've got to be serious.
Nah. There's no serious. We get to just be whatever we want. How are you, man?
Pretty good.
Good.
Pretty good.
So that's the public answer.
Yep.
Now we're going to do a check-in.
I'm pretty nervous, actually.
Yeah. So
and excited. My kids call it nerve-sided.
Nerve-sided. Yeah, I like
that. That's
that.
probably the word.
Yeah. I like putting a check-in in because, A, we get to unpack a little bit what's going on for us, which I think is valuable for the value of what happens after that. But also as a reminder for people listening to I can use this time to check in and see what's going on for me. So if you're listening, this is a great time for you to check in on what's going on for you right now. So physically, mentally, emotionally, what's it like to be Scott Ellis right now?
It's a big question, isn't it?
Well, you just told me you were good, so...
Yeah, good covers everything.
Yeah, we're done. End of podcast. What's going on physically?
Yeah, I'm feeling all right physically.
Mm-hmm.
Got some butterflies in the stomach.
Yeah.
I don't know. I struggle with that question.
Yeah.
Struggle to really tap in when you ask me on the spot.
Yeah.
That's probably why the answer, yeah, I'm all right, comes out more often than not.
Yeah, it's a pretty common one, isn't it? How you going? Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, good.
Mm.
Not bad, good, thanks.
Yeah.
That sort of answer.
Yeah.
Papers over it.
Mm.
Not that that's what I'm looking to do, but it allows you not to really feel into it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, if we move away from the physical and we go to the mental, the stories, the beliefs, the thoughts that are rolling through, what's kicking around up there at the moment as we get started?
Lots kicking around.
Yeah.
As I was telling you briefly earlier, trying to think of all the things I might talk about today means I end up with a million things in my head and no clarity whatsoever on any of them, really. So sort of feels like a jumbled mess of thoughts.
Cool.
That hopefully you will delicately extract in a meaningful way.
The tangled ball of wool challenge.
Yeah. You call it that.
I can't promise that, but I'm pretty sure it'll be fun trying. What about emotionally?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty emotional. A bit delicate, maybe is the word.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
What emotions are there?
I don't know. I feel like I could cry at any moment.
Cool.
Which is, I was going to say an unusual feeling for me, but it's not so unusual of late.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it's sadness or it's just like, maybe it's the built up nervous energy that needs to come out in some way.
Yeah. Well, there's tissues under the table there, so.
All right, good to know. Feels like I'm going to need it at some point.
Yeah, maybe. I've got a funny suspicion that I'm going to need it at some point. We have a bit of a history of laughing and crying together, so.
Don't tell everyone.
Okay. My check-in, physically, this is a little bit embarrassing, but I smoked a cigar on Sunday night for the first time in like 10 years, and accompanied with a little bit of red wine, which is very not me, but Joe's brother was here, and it was a bit of a celebration of some success of his. And I'm literally still feeling the after effects of um, a big fat cigar. Like I just feel like my chest is heavy, and because I don't smoke anything really, and I can actually still like smell the. I've washed my beard like twice since then. I can still smell the remnants of that cigar. So while it did feel pretty cool in the moment, like I've paid the consequence of trying to feel cool. And today it's still a bit chesty. So there's a little bit of that going on physically. Emotionally, I have actually been a little bit, I don't know whether it's nervous or anxious leading up to this one. Started sort of yesterday afternoon. And I think behind that is just a real willingness to want to do a good job today, and a little bit of anxiety that comes with, can I do a good job, and is this going to be a good podcast? And every podcast I do has got a little bit of that, but for some reason I feel like there's that volume button's turned up a little bit for this conversation, and even just giving voice to that makes it feel a little bit, that's okay, it's there and it doesn't need to dominate. And then mentally, yeah, there's probably some similarities with you. It's just there seems to be a few things, a few directions that we could go, and I don't really know which direction we are going to go. So I think we're both in that together. Yeah. And hopefully you can skillfully guide us to make some sense of it.
Jeez. Don't put that on me. Well, thanks for that. You did a much better job than me.
I have a little bit of practice for the check-in.
You have,
so, yeah.
On the physical side, it got me thinking when you were articulating yours that I've done a couple of days of physical activity in the last 4 days. I've been out 3 times,
Yep.
and I was going to go out again this morning, and I haven't. I've been a runner in the past, done a lot of training, but I'm not there at the moment.
Yep.
So 4 sessions in 5 days was going to be too much. So I got up this morning early because I was going to prep for this with a bit of a run, and I was like, nah. So physically, my body was like, that's too much. Yeah. So I did have that. At least had the awareness of that this morning, but it's funny when you ask me to tap into that right now. Didn't think about it.
Cool. So your body's kind of a little bit thankful for not going on the run. Get that extra little bit of recovery and rest.
It is. Needed the sleep. Plus I had a kid in my bed as usual last night, kicking me, keeping me awake. That's my youngest. No matter how many times I try and say, stay in your bed tonight, promise things, bribe.
Yeah.
She actually had the take home. She's in prep or in Queensland or kindergarten, New South Wales language. And she had the take home toy over the weekend. And I used that as an opportunity on Friday night to say, look, Monty the monkey is staying in your room, and she'd wrapped him up in his bed and put him to bed beautifully and done all the right things. And I said, well, you don't want to upset Monty. If you come into my bed, Monty's going to be on his own. He might be scared in our house.
Did it work?
No. I woke up at about, I don't know, whatever, middle of the night, 1 a.m. or something. And I was like, what's that in my back? It was Monty jammed under my shoulder blades with Heidi next to him. So even that didn't work. So basically, I just need to resolve.
I think she garnered the message of don't leave him by himself. Don't leave Monty by himself.
She did. That's what she took out of it.
Yeah.
Great. I'll bring him.
Leave no one behind. How do we know each other?
I met you through Joe, your lovely partner, who is friends with a good friend of mine, Yana.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking for help with one of my kids, with Quinn. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah, I do.
That was the first
It's the
conversation.
original conversation. Mm.
Yeah, looking for some, I don't even know what you call it, guidance, counseling, somebody to talk to. I've tried various things to help him in where he's at the moment. He's 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this was one of those things. And I remember I rang you and said something like, or you'd got the message that said something like, can you help with my 8-year-old boy?
Yeah.
And pretty quickly in the conversation, you said something like, I don't do kids. I can't help with your boy necessarily, but I can help with you. And I was like, well, that's not a question I ever asked. So
I didn't ask for
what
that.
do I need help with?
Yeah.
No, not exactly like that. Like I recognize the importance of that, of like helping myself with where I'm at as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I hadn't really approached you with that in mind at that particular moment.
Yeah.
So you sort of sucked me in with a,
So,
let's just have a coffee and a
I'd say
chat.
sucked you in. I have a pretty bad way of not having a filter sometimes when I'm talking to someone and just being like, I don't think that's the thing. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, I yeah, maybe I should have a better filter with that. But yeah, we started doing some work together.
Yeah. So you said come in for a chat, see how we go. And here we are. I mean, it hasn't been that long, 3 months, maybe 4 months later.
Yeah.
And we've had a whole bunch of really good conversations, and I really value it.
Bit of brainstorming, bit of mind mapping.
Mind mapping, yep.
Mm.
And yeah, it's changed the way I operate, I think, in this short period of time, my day-to-day life. I'm thinking about things differently, which is awesome.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think what I actually like about that is it's not that there's any special magic in it. It's actually that it's already in there. You know, all those parts of you are already in there, and it's just a matter of like seeing them clearly and seeing how they connect to other parts and all of that work. But it's all there. You know, like it was already you, and you already had the intention of where you wanted to head to and where you want to still head to and where you want to evolve to. And I think one of the things that jumps out for me with you is this: you came with this frame of like old Scott versus new Scott. And I really like that scenario of just bringing awareness to old Scott and how he did things and how you want new Scott to be different from that. Because I have a version of that. There's like an old Rick that my original operating system. And I think everyone listening has probably got a version of the older version of themselves that did things a certain way that may not be serving them right now.
But whether you're aware of it is another point, right?
Is it running you, or have you got some sort of scope towards it, awareness towards it? Yeah.
So my old Scott, new Scott was really black and white, the way that I thought about it and the way I described it to you, the first conversation. I had a mushroom journey which literally changed my life. And when was that? Like sort of 22 or thereabouts, 2022.
Yep.
And my wife came up with the terminology that you are a new person. I'm going to start calling you new Scott from that moment.
Yep.
Because she saw how it changed my behavior. Day to day, bigger picture, thinking, whatever. But basically myself, the entire me had changed, and therefore the name or the concept of New Scott was born.
Yeah, right.
So
How
for
long
me,
ago
it was
that?
about 2022, I think.
Yep.
I think it was January 22.
5.5 years, yeah.
Yeah, so she'd done one a few months earlier to assist her with her cancer journey. And it was profound to watch her go through that experience.
Yep.
Super beneficial. And then she basically said to me, you have to do this. Wasn't given an option. And I was curious. I wanted to anyway, but she approached it with, this will be really great for you. and it was.
Mm.
We can go into that, or we don't necessarily
Well,
need to go into that.
I'm
But it
just
was,
not necessarily going into too much detail, but I'm just curious around like what what did you see in that? Like, what did you learn in that? What awarenesses came from that experience that caused you to walk out of it feeling like new Scott?
the biggest one was it really allowed me to or tap into my emotions.
Okay.
So a lot of it was a real emotional journey. I
Yep.
basically cried for 90% of it. This thing that goes for 6 hours. So much so the facilitator, came over a few times, said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
While I was wetting the pillow on the lounge with my tears.
Mm.
And I was like, "Yeah, man, yeah, I'm fine. It's all good." And it was
Yeah.
powerful. It was beneficial, but it was emotional.
Just a lot of
A
emotions
lot
still
of
in it.
emotion.
Yeah.
I had plenty of visions of that. There's different things. One was a fish net, like you imagine one of those big trawler nets
Yeah.
coming through the ocean, and all the fish in there were my emotions, and they were trapped in my body. Just sitting there was about.
Yeah.
I'm holding my stomach right now, sort of somewhere on the side of my gut, and in that moment, I could feel it. Like, yes, that's where they were.
Mm.
And part of that journey was like cutting the net open and letting the fish come out. That was the visual anyway.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, what did that mean for me? It meant that I was like, from that point forward, I was able to better appreciate what I was feeling in any given moment.
Mm.
Not that you necessarily tell from the first question you asked me, but but really, like, I think about that more.
Yep.
It used to be, not that I was going to say I used to push them aside. I don't think that was a deliberate thing on my part. I
Yeah.
used to just not be aware of my emotions.
Yep.
And then they'd come out randomly.
Like a little bit sideways, or randomly,
Yeah.
as in a manageable way.
No, usually not manageable.
Yeah.
In order for them to become aware to me, they would have to basically burst out of my body.
Yeah.
So that could be, crying at an what I would consider inappropriate time. But that was very rare. Usually it was, they come out on the sporting field through anger.
Yeah.
They come out. That didn't happen very often either, by the way. But sometimes, like, as I said, when it happens, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, or just you could let them out through frustration of some sort.
Yeah.
But it was not planned. It was kind of like something would happen and then bang, there it was.
And I'm guessing, because you sort of said that you didn't really know a different way, it was just how it was done. I'm guessing that's how it was modeled to you, or what you saw in your house, or as growing up, and that sort of thing. That you didn't do that. You didn't express. You didn't speak about emotions. Because I know that was my experience. It was like the two emotions that were acceptable in our house were happy and neutral. Anything else was like, go to your room, sort that shit out.
Yeah.
You know? What was it like in your place?
Yeah, we didn't talk about emotions.
Yeah.
Really, at all. There was a bit of an attitude of boys don't cry.
Yep.
Or toughen up.
Yep.
Suck it up, whatever language you want to use.
Yep.
There's a little bit of sympathy for the worst of the events, but then it goes quickly.
Yep.
Now you need to move on, get over it.
Yep.
Sort of thing.
Boys don't cry, suck it up, get over it.
Yeah, and even talking about that now it's hard to say, actually, because I didn't appreciate that at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if I still fully appreciate all of that holistically.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to, like, when you grow up with it, it just is.
And it's just the generational,
yeah.
like it is. It's like a fish in water. It just is. That's just the water that we swim in.
Yeah, yeah.
I was exactly the same. Like, it's them doing their best with what they've got, because they were taught from their parents, And I think, I guess my question around this is like, what was it like for the net to be cut open? Because if you've had this I'll call it suppression, but just like the not expressing the emotions and the boys don't cry and that part of old Scott. What was it like when the net got sliced?
That's a big question.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
I think I'm seeing it now.
yeah, I'm feeling it now.
Yeah.
I mean, so the first thing I could go a number of directions on this question, but the first thing I would say is that I am, as a result, a lot more emotional,
Mm-hmm.
like you can hear now in my voice.
Yep.
So my daily life became, I guess, more just in tune with that when I'm feeling anything. Oh, I can sit there now and say, okay, I'm feeling sad.
Mm.
And it almost sounds dumb to say, but I was not like that
No.
before 2022. The
Most men
question,
our age weren't.
how are you feeling? Yeah, I'm fine.
Mm.
If you could even probably trigger me back then and say, like, or try and prompt me, and say, like, are you feeling a bit sad? And I'd be like, don't think so.
No, I'm good.
Not that I'm aware of,
Yeah.
because I was literally not aware of it.
Mm.
So that my daily life became a little bit more tuned in.
Yep.
I think probably what's more relevant is the way that I lived my life was changed, because I would share things with Kate, my wife, more
Yep.
as a result of, I guess, being more in tune with myself in particular, but also then therefore more in tune with her.
Yep.
And more engaged non-intellectually in the conversation. I want to say
More in a
emotionally.
felt sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel right to say emotionally engaged, but yeah, in a more of a feeling sense. So if we were having a serious conversation about something, I was now more embodying that conversation, not just thinking about what she was saying or the next thing I was going to say and trying to work out the problem, which, that is my default mode.
It's a bit old Scott.
Oh, you got a problem? Yeah, here's the solution.
Yeah.
In fact, I got 3 solutions.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
Hurry up and finish speaking so I can tell you about them.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, probably.
Maybe a little
to be fair, probably, but I don't feel like I did that.
Not explicitly, but just maybe the story in the head.
She probably wouldn't agree with that, and other people in my life, friends and family, probably wouldn't agree with that either. But that certainly wasn't my intent to say, I'm not here to listen to you.
Oh yeah, I know.
It was more about I've listened to you completely, and I have the answer for you.
Yeah,
is how I thought about it anyway.
Yeah,
but sometimes there is no answer.
Yeah. And there's just feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine it took some time to get used to that.
Yeah, it did.
Maybe it still does.
I think so. I'm pretty okay with that concept now. It still sucks. And the reason why I'm emotional about this now is because, as you know, my wife died from cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I wasn't really planning on talking about this exactly, but as I said that sentence, there is no answer sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what came to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just shit.
Yeah. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Well, as far as the end result, but there's plenty you can do about it.
Yeah.
In the meantime. And I think, back to your question of, can't remember what it was, but something like what did New Scott mean to me? But it enabled me to live the final couple of years with Kate.
Yeah.
In a completely different way and a much deeper way. and our whole relationship changed. Like I've said to some of my mates before, like the last few years of our lives were the best in many ways.
Yeah.
I was going to say in some, I don't want to water it down. Like it was beautiful in many, many ways. And in other ways, it was
Fucked.
horrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try not to swear.
Oh, you can swear, mate.
And yeah, it's hard. It's hard in any given moment to be grateful for those moments, for that path, for that journey. But I am.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to turn out this way.
No.
I would have chosen another path, but if it wasn't this, then I wouldn't have had the experiences that I had with her.
Yep.
And us and our kids and you, Scott. That's why this is such a big topic, because in some ways New Scott was born out of that journey.
Yep. And the cutting of the net was kind of the start of that, yeah? Like being able to be...
I think so, yeah. I mean, immediately my mind went to, well, there was a couple of years of our cancer journey before that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much so that I almost can't remember the way that I used to behave or act in a given situation.
Yep. Yep.
Except that it was probably a little less heart.
Yeah.
Maybe a little cold. A
little more solution.
It's really hard to say because I don't want to think of myself that way.
Yep. Yep.
But it probably was.
Yeah. And it's half the battle is to like acknowledge and the other shitty A word, accept, some of these older parts of ourselves when they're, we don't really want to be great friends with them. They mightn't highlight our greatest characteristics, but they're still a part of who we are today. Because it's nearly that contrast, isn't it? It's like, without that experience, I don't get the other side. I don't get the contrast. And I'm just thinking about those 2 years that you got to have with Kate. And it sounds like that you were able to feel and listen and be open in those 2 years comparative to the cancer part before that. Is that fair?
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah.
It changed the way she lived her life. I saw that. It's obviously easier to see when you're watching someone else.
Yeah, of course.
It's quite obvious. When it's yourself, it's a lot harder. So I saw that her way of living changed too. She became a lot more spiritual.
Yep.
And as a result, dragged me into that and our family into that. And we carry on that practice to this day. So that's another thing that has sort of been birthed out of this experience.
Yeah.
That's just completely different.
Yeah.
And yeah, you said it's kind of hard to look back on who you were and accept that that was there, and that, well, probably there is some of that that's still within you. After we had this conversation about New Scott and we started going back further in time, I realized that there's multiple New Scotts in my within me.
Yeah.
If you like.
Yeah.
And there's the way that I can think about it now is there's definitely moments in time where I had a step change.
Yep.
This latest one was the most obvious.
Yep.
Maybe because it was, mushroom assisted, maybe because it's the most recent, I don't know, but maybe because of the dynamic that I was living in at the time.
Yep.
But going back through time, the start of my working life, the way I behaved when I was 18 versus 28 versus 38, etc. I look back and think like, what was I thinking? Yeah. Who was I?
So what would be, I'm going to put you on the spot again.
Great.
They're your words. What would be an example of 18-year-old Scott that some of the behaviours or practices that he had that are maybe not so evident now, that maybe you've evolved out of?
Hmm.
Because that's just the time around finishing school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think 18-year-old Scott was pretty oblivious to many things, but particularly other people's emotions,
Yep.
feelings, and so forth. And again, not in a mean way,
Yeah. Just in an 18-year-old way.
just ignorant,
Yeah.
naive in a way, but yeah, more just ignorant, not aware.
Yep.
And if someone came to me for help, for example, I would wrap them up and I would help them.
Yep.
But I kind of felt like it was someone else's job to come and tell me. Like, if you're upset, come tell me about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I shouldn't have to read you, Rick.
Yeah. It's not my job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, it's embarrassing to talk about that sort of stuff now. It flowed through to relationships as well. Just not allowing myself fully into relationships at that time.
From a curiosity point of view of like what's going on for you, or just from being passive? I guess they may be the same thing.
Yeah, I think mostly what's going on for you is the question that I never asked.
Yep.
And more just because it never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
As bad as that sounds to say.
No.
It was like, oh, we're here, we're having fun, having
Yeah.
a good time, everything's great. Going out with our friends, like what's there? What more is there to
Yeah.
dig into?
Yep.
Um,
And it makes sense, because it's like if you weren't in touch with, the feeling side of you, it makes sense that you definitely were in touch with other people's feeling sides. The radar wasn't up. The empathy radar wasn't up because it wasn't up for yourself.
yeah. We've talked about this briefly, but when you asked me that question, this is the first thing I thought of. It was about relationships, about like female
Yep.
relationships in my case. And, I was hurt by a relationship when I was probably 16, 17.
Yep.
Obviously, at the time, it was the biggest deal in the world. Now, when I look back on it, I mean, it was still a big deal, I guess, in the sense that it shaped my life, but nothing, the relationship itself is what it is when you're 16.
Yeah.
And I can definitely appreciate now, with the benefit of hindsight, that did shape the next few years for me, where I put up a protective barrier. I mean, this
as in not trusting other people. Is that what?
Yeah, just not allowing myself to get hurt again.
Okay. Yeah.
And I, at the time, never thought about it like that at all.
Yeah.
Because I probably didn't even realize what was going on with myself, let alone therefore needing to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
But with the benefit of hindsight, I can see that I was holding people at bay. I had another relationship shortly after that where the girl was much more into me than I was into her, and I ended it pretty quickly because I had that realization that I wasn't there.
Yep.
And that is the moment in time where a new Scott was born.
Yeah, right.
We've talked about this briefly, but that was, and I think about this semi-regularly. I was only going out with her for a few months. Again, when I look back on it, not that big a deal as far as a moment a time in my life, whatever, but it was a pivot point in my life that has shaped me.
So what part of New Scott did evolve from there?
I think that's sort of where that recognition of others'
Right.
feelings and I don't know how to describe this, like that recognition of we might not be on the same page here.
Mm.
Like we were going out, we were having fun. That was enough for me. We liked each other.
Yep.
That was great. And then I had this moment where I realized, oh, shit, she's like really into me and I'm just having fun. And that's not fair.
Yep.
So it was that
Gotcha.
moment.
Yeah, there's care there.
There's care. Yeah. Absolutely. I cared about her. I care. Yeah. Nothing.
But the care that she was in it more than you.
Yes.
Yeah. To not continue.
Yep. And it's still the hardest breakup I've ever had to do. Mostly because I haven't had to do many. Most women broke up with me. So it's easy. But it's a really hard message to deliver because the message is effectively, it's not you, it's me. But that's the classic line, right?
Yeah.
Because it really was. Like I was basically saying, I really like you, but not
As much as you like
not as
me.
much as you like me.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm not ready to even try to like you as
Yeah.
much as you like me. Unfortunately, that is where I was at that moment in time.
Yeah.
And obviously, she didn't understand that at the time.
Yeah.
No one would, I don't think. I definitely didn't deliver it like I just said it then. But that was the reality.
Yep.
And all I could think about was I need to pull the pin now because if I try and do this in 6 months' time, in 12 months' time,
Yeah.
it's just going to be all the more harder and I will have known that I was never really in it to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's unfair. That's where I'd gotten to at the time.
So you managed to step into a challenging conflict to make sure that it was clear that you didn't put your ladder up against the wrong building, so to speak. That's a bad analogy to use. But like you said, it didn't get down the track and you were down the track version of where you are in regards to not being there, not being in it with her. I think what I'm getting at, like what's under it for me is like you had the bravery to step into the challenging conversation because you knew it was right and you cared that enough that it was beneficial to cut it now than to let it play out. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was even... I think it was more of it's almost an intellectual exercise at the time. Like I thought my way through it. The way I just described it then.
Yeah.
It was like a logic. It was an argument with myself about what's right and wrong, what's fair.
Yeah.
But there was obviously an element of empathy and care for her in that situation. And
at that age, that was new, yeah?
And I think that's where it started, yeah. Really. I mean, as I said, I don't feel like sorry, let me say that again. I don't feel like I don't care about others. In fact, I would say that I care about people greatly.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I wasn't aware enough to really realize what they were feeling.
Yep.
So therefore, most of it just went straight past me. And so I think that was sort of the birth of that moment, the birth of this transition to greater heart-led engagement with people.
Yep.
I met Kate not long after that, like, I don't know exactly, a couple of years, not too long. And that was another pivotal moment because at the time, I don't want this to sound wrong, but I had sort of the opportunity to have a relationship with someone who wasn't serious.
Yep.
That looked like it was going to be a lot of fun, or have a relationship with this new girl who ended up becoming my wife, who was more than likely going to be more serious because, in fact, I cared about her more. And I thought she was the same. So therefore, it was sort of like the same decision, if you like, but coming in at the start of it rather than 3 months in and thinking, oh, crap, what have I done?
Yep.
And I made the call. Again, this is more of like a logical argument, but I basically told myself, if you're going to have this relationship with Kate, who you care about and who looks like she cares about you, you need to be serious. Like, you need to be committed to this. If otherwise, don't even start.
Yep.
So I chose to be committed.
And she ended up as your wife.
And she ended up as my wife, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I told a story at her funeral where on our first date we had this moment where our eyes connect, like we were staring into each other's eyes deeply.
Yeah.
And I had this bolt of electricity that went through my entire body. And that's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking to myself, if I marry this girl, I will remember this moment as the moment like where I fell in love, effectively.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It and it was a first date, and
Oh, I feel that one.
um and obviously I remember that moment. I can still feel it in some ways.
Yeah.
I don't know what that has to do with the story. Sorry, but
I think it just paints a picture of the, because what's
it was
alive from,
serious, I guess, is what I was trying to get at.
yeah, going into a relationship to have fun versus going into a relationship to be like, oh, I know this, there is something bigger here, right from the start.
Yeah, right from the start.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously in that moment, I thought my logical brain said, yeah, whatever. Like, you just like this girl because she's pretty, whatever. Justified it away,
Yep.
which is, I'm very good at that. Don't worry about that heart feeling. Don't worry about that sensation of electricity through your whole body. That's you're just making that up. So I was able to convince myself otherwise. However, that feeling has never left me.
Yeah.
That moment has never left me. I can visualize it now, where we were sitting.
Can hear it in your voice. Yeah.
And I don't know how true it is because, you make up memories in your head, but I can see it. I can picture it if I close my eyes.
Yeah.
I can
And
see it.
It sounds like back then you kind of you didn't have the tools or weren't willing to acknowledge that heartfelt stuff. Whereas now it seems like that's completely flipped the other way, where you're essentially heart-led now. No.
That's probably a bit generous.
Okay.
But I'd like to think so. I'd like to think I'm on the path to that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm 50-50 at the moment.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm really trying to acknowledge those feelings. When I have that moment, and I haven't had another one of those, by the way, but there's little moments through your day-to-day life where you get a feeling, you get an inkling, you get intuition about something.
Yep.
I'm trying not to just bat that away and say that's nothing. And I'm actually trying to, and more than that, I'm trying to tap into it.
Yeah.
And just allow that thing to exist, to happen, to guide me in some way, whatever.
To trust whatever's there.
To trust it, yeah.
Yeah.
Trust is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if trust is fitting in with new Scott, is old Scott more of the control, like the logical?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a word.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been doing a lot of things to assist myself lately. And when we first met, I don't know if you remember, but I had a kinesiology session. I had an ayahuasca session. I was getting a tattoo for the first time. I was starting with you, all within 4 weeks of each other, I think. And the reason why I give that little bit of detail is because in every single one of those events, independently, the idea of me being too controlling came up. And just basically smacked me in the face, because that's what I need in order to understand these things sometimes.
So you got the same message from 4 independent sources.
Yeah. And if you'd asked me before that, are you a controlling person? I would have said no. Hand on my heart, nah, don't think so.
Yep.
I mean, do I like to know what's going on? Do I think about things in advance? Do I strategize? Yeah, all those things.
Mm.
I kind of view them as a positive.
Yep.
Control to me sounds like a negative.
Mm.
You know, you can't let go. You need things to go your way. Otherwise, you get flustered or upset. I don't think about myself like that,
Yep.
or I wouldn't have. But I kind of do. I'm coming to the realization that that's who I am,
Yeah.
or was, hopefully, end up
Yeah.
moving away from.
How did you benefit from control?
Um,
And I say did.
yeah. Well, it allows you to.
Allows me.
It allows someone else, some third party. It makes it easier to get what you want. If you're in a sports scenario and you want to achieve a goal, you set up a training regime. You have steps along the way to ultimately meet this goal, and all of that process is about control. I'd need to do this thing today, that thing tomorrow, the next thing the next day, and if it doesn't follow this path, I'm going to be not heading towards my goal, I guess, is the idea.
Mm.
And so that's a sports context. In business, it's the same.
Yep.
In my world, it's the same. You've got the goal. You set out your strategy for how to get there.
Yep.
And you work your ass off to make it happen. And see, what I would say is along the way, things don't go according to plan.
Yep.
And I'm very good at reorienting, adapting to that, and still pushing forward.
Yep.
It's actually probably one of my core strengths is doing that. And I used to think about that as being an overwhelmingly positive thing because I'm able to handle situations and continue to move forward. See, I would think about that as being out of control and running with it. But I think what I've now realized is there's an element of control around that. I use the analogy of a soccer field.
Yep.
While I'm on the field and anything's happening, the ball's going everywhere, stuff that you didn't plan is happening, you adjust.
Yep.
You're still heading towards goal. And that's what I thought about as sort of uncertainty and me being willing to trust and be uncertain.
Mm.
But then taking a step back or maybe a step up and viewing the stadium or the field as a whole, I've realized that I needed the game to be in that field effectively. And that is my control.
Controlled it. Yeah.
As long as we're in the field and we're playing by the rules,
you can
then
dance.
I'm good. Yeah, I can dance wherever you want me to. But you try and tell me that we're changing fields or we're playing a different sport, to keep this analogy going.
Yep.
That's when I couldn't do it, I guess. That's what I'm starting to realize now. I don't know the answer to that. But.
So if you move out of the field, what does that mean?
Well, it's scary because it's almost like I don't even know where we're going. I mean, we're moving out of this field and what is out there? Is there another field?
Yeah.
Is there no field? Is there a forest? Is there a brick wall? I guess it's the unknown, right? I don't know what's outside the field, and that's scary to think about.
Right.
And I'm just thinking about that at the moment, career-wise, and trying to. I know I need to leave the field.
It's fucking scary out there.
Or I should say, I want to leave the field. The field has served me well in my career to date. However, I'd like to go now. The game's over. I'd like to try something else.
Yep.
And so part of the work we've been doing is I'm trying to set up some space to enable me to have time to work out how to get out of the stadium. Geez, I'm stretching this analogy, but you know what I mean? I
think it's still alive.
Trying to set up some space. And what I've realized is that I'm very, very good at locking all the doors to keep me in the field, because the field is where I'm at.
Yeah.
And leaving it, while it's scary and exciting, on the positive side, is exciting, it scares me more than it excites me, probably.
Yeah.
So I'm very good at, I think subconsciously, keeping myself there. Because if you ask me, like, are you allowing yourself space to trust the process and trust where the universe is going to take you? I'd say absolutely. I'm doing my best to do that. But also I've realized that I'm very good at putting guide rails
Mm.
in my way or around me to keep me on the path that I'm on. Very good at it, actually.
Yeah.
So good that I don't even know that I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well said. Mm. I don't think you're alone there either. I feel like you've had some experiences over the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever, that have allowed you to get to know yourself a lot better than you used to. Yeah. And like then some of these themes become really evident. And I think we had a conversation the other week, and it was around like how you potentially you stay looped in this sequence of control.
Mm.
And are you okay if we share that a
Yeah.
little bit?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I said, but let's go there.
Well, I think it was the to-do list, right? It was the busyness side of it. And
Mm.
what my memory of some of our conversation was around how the to-do list serves you, like what you get from being tasky and getting things done. And I think we spoke about all the feedback loops that come with achievement, So like you get the dopamine hit, you feel valuable, you're getting stuff done, there's productivity, like all the human experience of being fucking valuable. You get all those things and you move towards the direction that you're heading, So there's an intrinsic reward system there. And then I asked you about how does it feel to rest? Or how does it feel to have space? I think the language was. And you said to me, I feel guilty. And I said, what are you guilty of? Do you remember this?
No. Was I there?
Yeah, you were there.
Okay.
And the guilt was around not doing the taskiness. So for you, my memory of this was the space felt a little bit indulgent and guilty because it wasn't attached to the to-do list, the taskiness, the outcome, all of that stuff. So sitting in that just felt so foreign compared to the reward system of the to-do list.
Yep.
Yeah. And then that kind of creates the loop, the busyness loop, got to keep doing that thing. I feel guilty if I go and do that. So I'll keep doing this because that's where my reward is. And that's how we stay stuck in place.
Mm. Yeah. Before that conversation, I was listening to a podcast, speaking of synchronicities and messages from the universe. And they were talking about, in general, they were talking about what it's like to be a man. And one of the questions that was asked was, what is the thing that prevents you from being the king of your own castle? So to be a man, you're taking responsibility, you're doing this, you're doing that, whatever.
Yep.
Won't go into that, everything they were talking about. But it got me thinking, what is the thing that prevents me from being the king of my castle? I'm a single dad with 3 kids.
Yep.
I am the king of the castle. Like there's no one else at the moment. So, therefore I have to be, sort of thing. And I was going through the list that they were talking about, alcohol, drugs, porn, relationships. And I'm like, nah. And then I had to just sit back for a bit, and I thought, all right, well, let's go through a day. What's the first thing that I do? And I thought, I go to my office, like once the kids' stuff's sorted, obviously. I go to my office and I'll pull out my to-do list. And I was like, holy shit. The to-do list is my thing that is, ironically, preventing me from doing things.
And the
if I want to
irony
put it
is
that
so
way.
beautiful.
And I just had this, those moments you have where you're like, have I just stumbled onto something profound here? And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, I mean, that is the thing. It's at the moment, it's a crutch
How did
for
your
me
to-do list stop you from moving forward?
because it is so enormously long, Rick, that there is no way that I can ever get through it. It's
Right.
not a to-do list anymore. It's
Death sentence.
it's I just thought of this. It's almost like it's the walls of my stadium is my to-do list.
Ah.
Really.
Yep.
I have, if you checked out the scraps of paper on my desk or the notes on my computer,
Yep.
I have lists from years ago, literally. And that bit doesn't really worry me as far as the process of that.
Yeah.
I can deal with that because I sort of know that it's there and I've written it for a reason at some point in my life.
Yeah.
Sure, that might have been 5 years ago, but it's still there and I will come back to it at some point.
Yeah.
Because it's important to me. It obviously was important. I'll at least come back to cross out all the things and think, I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
However, I can't. If you said to me, why don't you just delete them all now, throw out all those bits of paper and start afresh, I can't do it. So therefore,
Why not?
why not? And therefore, it is controlling me in that way. It is preventing me from being the king of my domain. That's how I started
preventing you in a way about like not being able to move forward until the list is done, and the list never gets done, so you can't move forward.
Yep.
Right.
Because I'm trying to create space right now, and my immediate process, the way I think about it, is okay. Well, what do I need to do first in order to get to that space? I just need to get through the list. Is where I end up eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, so once the list is done, then I'll have the space.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a fool's game. I already know that. Like explaining it to you now, it sounds silly, but that is that is my daily. That has been my daily life.
And is it the busyness? Is it the productivity? Like, what's the addictive part of it for you?
I don't know if it's the busyness anymore. I had a mate tell old Scott once upon a time. I've worked in investment banking. I've worked in jobs that demand a lot of your time over the years. And a mate of mine said to me once, "You are the busiest person I know." And there was a part of me in that moment that went, "Yeah, I am."
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. You know it. And that's embarrassing to admit. But there was a part of me that appreciated that in some way. Yeah, that I can fit in a lot into my day. More so than most people, more so than anybody, maybe. That's how you think about it.
So there's a bit of identity attached to that.
There is some identity attached to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think of the word busy as a compliment, but that's what kept getting thrown back at me.
Yeah.
But, you could replace that with words that sound better, like important. You've got a lot to do because you're important. That's sort of how I twisted it.
Yeah, right.
I've got an important job. I'm doing important things. I have a lot of important meetings today. Whatever shit. Like Kate used to make fun of me because of that sort of stuff. I used to make fun of myself,
Yeah.
because I wasn't really that attached to it, but maybe I was more than I realized in that moment. So I tell that story to give context because that's not who I am anymore.
Yeah.
Or that's not who I want to be anymore. And it's been that way for quite a while. I'm trying to create space. I don't want to be busy, actually. So why is it that I am very good at making myself busy at any moment at any point in the day? I remember I came here one day and it was one of our sessions and I was proud of myself because I had 15 minutes before our chat. I was early. And actually I did think this, what can I do on my list for 15 minutes? I actually thought about that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to sit here and have a coffee and meditate a bit effectively. Like I closed my eyes for 5 minutes and I just sat there. And you were very complimentary and said, "Well done, that's a huge thing." And like, it sounds dumb to say that, but because it's such a small
It's a
little
small thing,
thing.
but it's the
But
micro steps that lead to the big change, you know?
but that's how I thought about my life. What can I do in 15
Mm.
minutes before my
Oh, I hear
appointment
you.
with Rick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my version of this as well.
Even my self-care time, like I'll go for a massage. I run into that massage at a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
I sit down for an hour, try and tell myself to relax,
Yeah.
and then come out of it and I'm bam off to the next thing.
It's
So
like
that's how I structure my free time. It's like a place in my diary.
it's another thing on the list.
It's not space. It's another thing on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it is. And so I'm at least aware enough now to realize that that's what I'm doing. Fixing it's another problem or another thing altogether. But I guess what I'm trying to get at in that rambling is, I guess I've now got an appreciation for how would I say, organizing time, organizing space is different from having space that's there all the time.
Yep.
I don't know if that makes sense, but it sort of makes sense in my head. Because organizing space feels comfortable to me. I
Is
can
it
do
like,
that.
an hour for the massage, that
Yeah.
sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Having space, it was almost having nothing to do, is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It feels completely different.
What does doing nothing represent to you? Serious.
Yeah.
Like what do you make it mean?
I don't know what I make it mean, but the first word that came to my mind when you asked that is it's a waste. It feels like a waste of time. I've got this time, I need to be using it to do something. And doing nothing is wasting it. And I don't know what that means. Beyond that.
No, I don't. If you don't think there needs to be anything more than that, like it's a pretty strong belief, But it's also can be proven as factually true based on past experience. I'm busy. I've got shit to do, and resting or having space. That's something when I've got all my things done, because that's been the story, isn't it? It's like I'll do that when I'm done, and then we never get done.
We never get done.
No. And if you think about it from a nervous system's perspective, which I don't really roll into too much, but there's some relevance of like the doing all the time jacks the system into activation. And to just say, oh, I'm going to have a 3-hour block where I do nothing is challenging because it's one thing to mentally think that, but the system's up and about. The system's in doing mode. It's activated. So then it's like, how do I get my system down to grounded to actually be present in the rest and do the thing, like actually read the book, or because the system can often be up, and that's a tough one to, to throw into the mix as well as all the reward systems of getting things done. I've got a story for you. I last weekend, not the one just been the one before, we went up to my study up in Brisbane. So 3 days of Gestalt therapy, and it's always a really big emotional experience. Not so much sort of outwardly, but just a lot of feeling, a lot of cognitive, a lot of big energies in the room. We're doing therapy with each other, so there's like stuff out in the sphere, and I always come home on a Monday. I would finish on a Sunday and get home, and I'm learning to be better at blocking off Mondays to just not book appointments. So last Monday, I cleared the day. I had men's circle at night. I had to do a little bit of prep for that in the afternoon, but I gave myself 3 hours to read a book. The level of guilt that I had in that action was consistent for 3 hours. Like I would drop into what the book was, and then 10 minutes later I'd be like, fuck, you should be doing something. I was just shooting myself. And this was really clear parameter kind of thing. Like, I have this time, it's important, I need it. But the cognitive was probably the strongest out of the physical, mental, emotional. Like the mental was like, you should be doing all of this. You can't stop. Taking rest is a waste. It's the same stuff, you know. And I fucking sat in it for 3 hours and felt so indulgent and so, oh, this is like way out of the realms of comfortableness. But I did it. And I'll probably do it again now and just see next time if it's a little bit less. But it's so present, this conditioning we have to do, to achieve, to be, you know, especially if we're building something, you know, building a career, building a family, building a, you know, physical goal, like men and women, but we can get super hyper focused on the outcome. And then we can get critical and judgy of ourselves when we're not doing something towards the outcome, you know? And I felt that the other day sitting here reading a book. And even Joe's like, did you have 3 hours? And I'm like, yeah, it was like a battle. It was a battle to do it. So it's a real thing, you know. And, you know, you said before, like, I don't know how to fix it. And I don't know if fixing is the right term. It's like, maybe it's more around how do we create a new relationship with it that's a little bit more healthy, you know? Because I don't think it's going to disappear overnight, funnily enough. You know, our society,
right about that.
our society rewards it, you know. Being successful in your job and all of those things come with, you know, the validation of others, and there's so many emotional undertones to it.
Yeah, well, even my parents were over this weekend, just gone, and I mentioned briefly at one point, you know, about what we're talking about work, and I said, I'm just in the process of stepping back a little bit from what I'm currently doing. The question comes, why? Oh, because I want to do something else. What else? Or what is the else? Don't know yet. So you're just going to do less work. That you can kind of see that judgment of like, right, so you're going to do the next thing or your idea for the next thing is to do nothing.
Yeah.
Isn't that counterproductive? Like, that's ridiculous. You can kind of, they didn't say that. My parents didn't say that. And to be honest, I'm not even sure if they felt that, but I felt it in the conversation. I felt like I needed to justify this decision that I was currently taking.
And this is the really huge part. Like, it's one thing for us internally to say, I'm going to do that thing and I'm going to make more space and I'm going to pull back from work. And we can reconcile that internally. It's a whole nother ballgame when we have to present that to someone else. You know, hey, mum, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Whoa. You know, because then it's, what are these other people thinking about us? These people that have this view of me, this security, this strength, the success. Is that being challenged now? Is my identity being challenged if I'm doing something different to what other people expect me to do?
Definitely.
Yeah. And this is why it's way easier to live in a fucking vacuum and not speak to anyone. But it's why isolation is a really core symptom of when we're challenged, because it's just fucking easier to do our thing internally rather than step into it in relationship with other. But that's the training ground. That's where it has to happen, you know.
So what I heard you say just then is it's everyone else's fault. I just need to get them out of my life.
Or you could just not care.
Yeah.
I'm not sure either of those strategies in 100% is going to be viable, but it's interesting to look at the impact of like this whole thing between external validation and self-validation. You and yourself knowing what I want and the courageous and uncertain steps it's going to take to get there, even though I don't know where there is. It's like that liminal space of not being uncertain about what it looks like. It's one thing for you to be in that. It's a whole other thing to explain that to someone else. And because there's this different validation process in it of like judgment and fear of change and all these things that people bring back to us, whether it's explicit or not. But I think the self-validation part is the first step. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Am I clear in what I'm doing? And it doesn't mean to be clear about outcome. It's like am I clear about the direction that I'm heading, even though I don't know where the direction finishes? Because if I'm not, how am I going to verbalize that to anyone?
Yeah. And I'm pretty clear with myself that I need this space. I know that I do. This is the trusting bit. I can feel it, that I need it.
Yep.
I don't know why, and that's what makes it hard.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I don't know how. And so I'm sort of knowing that I need to step into the void of uncertainty and unknowing and just be there, because that is going to be valuable for a reason that I, at the moment, can't articulate.
Yeah, it's not evident yet.
Or don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's where the trying to explain it to someone else comes in, because you can't. Yeah. I mean, I can't really say any more than what I just said then. Yeah. But you try and justify, or I try and justify it when you're speaking to someone. Oh, what I'm really doing is like, strategizing about a new business plan, blah, blah, blah.
Spit out the socially acceptable.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is like, it's an innovative, career generating, maximize, whatever. I don't know. Just talking shit now, but it's,
it's the easier option.
You try and put it in words that are acceptable, in a concept that's acceptable, or what you think is acceptable to somebody else.
Yeah.
Which really, at the end of the day, is about go, 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 I think.
Yep.
If you're not doing something, then you're not really giving it your best shot.
Yep.
Or at least that's how I feel. That's how I was raised. That is ingrained in me.
Yep.
So therefore, not doing something must logically mean that you're not giving it your best shot. Why wouldn't you give it your best shot? You're a high performer. You're good at stuff. You're a good person. And you're choosing not to try. Like that's that's the judgment side of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not choosing not to try. I'm choosing to try something different.
That you're choosing to lean into the willingness to be uncertain. And that's uncomfortable, because of all the other structures are the opposite of that. The doing, the achieving, the success, the feedback, meeting other people's needs, like all of it.
The other thing that comes up for me, is the consequence. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, no one got fired buying IBM.
No.
Back when there was a Challenger computer. If I stay in my current career position and I keep going, and something goes wrong, it's not my fault, because I've tried. People would say, you were doing everything you could. You had a good
you got
job,
retrenched, so to speak.
Whatever it is. Like basically, you gave it your best shot, and it just turned out that something went wrong. However, if you make the call to,
if you're the instigator,
if I'm the instigator, of pulling myself into space and allowing that to happen, and effectively being seen to be trying nothing from the outside world, well, then when I fail, it's my fault. People, I don't know if anyone would actually say this. There would be some that would, but it definitely feels like you have the finger of judgment,
condemnation,
being pointed at you and saying, well, if you make this stupid decision, then you're going to get bad outcomes. And that, I can recognize that, but it doesn't make the decision any easier.
It actually makes it harder.
Yeah, and it's like anything in life, obviously. If you go against the herd, you will be yelled at if you fail.
Yep.
And you will not be really, actually, this is the other part, you will not necessarily be hailed if you succeed.
Mm.
Because depending on what the topic is now, I'm thinking of something very different, but people don't necessarily want you to succeed if you're going against what they're doing.
Yeah, it's threatening.
Yeah.
Yeah. All I'm thinking about as you're speaking is like, what is this modeling to your 3 kids? You know?
Which part?
Oh, the willingness to go against the grain.
Yeah, well, oh man. Hopefully it's modeling some really good things for them.
Mm.
I mean, from their point of view, they don't want me to be busy.
Yeah.
They ask me all the time in their own way, when are you going to stop work and play with us?
Yeah.
And that's hard to hear.
Yeah.
It's super hard to hear. And obviously I've got an answer for it. I need to work. Otherwise we can't afford this house. We can't afford the things that you want to do. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Even as I say that to them, I know that it's a little bit bullshit.
Yeah.
There's obviously some truth. There's an element we have to live. But a big chunk of it as well is really, if I want to take responsibility for this, back to that, if I want to be the king of my castle, I have chosen to do what I'm doing right now. And part of that decision is to not play with them as much as they want.
Yeah.
That's the reality. I can justify it as much as I like.
Yeah.
But that's where I am. And if I'm not happy with that, something has to change from me.
Yeah.
Not from them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the adult. After all, I'm the one that's put us in this work situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to do. I'm a bit better at that, actually. I can handle that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can't, to be honest. Not that I don't want to focus a conversation on others or judge anybody, but I think like that whole concept is really hard for people to, like, ultimately to take responsibility for their actions.
Yep.
To appreciate that you've put yourself here.
Yep.
Rightly or wrongly.
Yep.
You are where you are.
Yep.
You know?
It's massive. Like the self-responsibility piece is so huge.
Yeah, so I hope on the surface I can actually get some more time to play. Play in general, play with my kids, be freer in that regard.
Yep.
And yeah, I hope that those actions are flow down in a positive way to them. That's another thing that came up in all these sessions. I'm just thinking about, I'm trying to find therapies and things to do to help my children deal with the death of their mother.
Yep.
And just lately, the messages come back to me so strongly from all these different modalities. Fix yourself and it'll flow through to them. And that, again, kind of sounds obvious when I say it, but it hasn't been obvious to me.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Yeah. That's what jumped out to me on that first phone call. What support do you have?
Yeah. And I probably shouldn't use the word fix, but you know what I mean? Like better yourself.
Yeah.
Improve yourself. Change your daily habits. That's what I mean. Live your life in the best way, and that will have a bigger impact on them. Someone actually said to me, it will have like an impact that you cannot possibly imagine, actually. It'll be that strong.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of like, oh, really? Like they see a little bit. They might pick up a little bit.
No.
But they don't, right? They see everything.
They're little emotional sponges.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And I think that was underneath the question of like, what is that modeling to your kids? It's What I see that it's modeling is like my dad values his family. My dad goes after what he wants. My dad doesn't follow. My dad does it differently, you know? And they're pretty fucking good things to model to your kids.
Yeah, they are. I'd love that. I would love that. And I'd love to, obviously, I'd love to give them everything they want.
Yeah. We just have to block out the rest of the world.
Exactly. It's all those other idiots.
Thinking you're crazy. It's to keep coming back to this, like, it's actually the courage to be uncertain. It's the courage to know what you don't want, but you don't know what the other side looks like yet. You know? It's like driving at night. You only see, if it's foggy, you only see as far as your lights can show you. You know? It feels a little bit like that. It's like, what's the next step? What's the next 2 steps? Cool. But I don't know where the fucking endpoint is. You know? And that, if we come back to how control serves us, how it's served old Scott, like, knowing your endpoint has been your fucking go-to. You know, it's served you so well because, like you said, you like work it back, work out the processes, stick to discipline. I can adapt if I need to, but you get into that thing. If you haven't got a thing that you're getting to, it's new territory for you, you know. But it's the courage to be uncertain in that. But just, what does the first step look like? You know, that's what you're working on now, and I think that's this like this realization around, we'll just call it busyness, but the to-do list essentially has been part of the realization that that's part of the block for you. That's how you stay stuck, how you get in your own way, how you stay in that loop.
Yeah.
So it's like, cool, know that now. What the fuck do I do with it? Well, that's, you know, work in progress.
I mean, it's just so ironic that
The irony is so beautiful.
the thing that has helped me so much over the years, you know, lists have helped me get stuff out of my head. You know, the jumbled ball of wool that you said at the start, you know, getting that onto paper and having some structure and organization around it has helped me immensely.
Yep.
And now it's the thing that's effectively holding me back or
holding you in place. Yeah.
Holding me in place, making it so much harder. The other thing that came through when you were talking just then is you said the first step. What is the first step? It almost feels like the first step is no step now.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what I mean by that, except that a step feels like I'm on a path again. Like, all right, I'm going that way.
Yep.
I don't know which way I'm going. I want to just sort of sit in the fog.
Yeah, and that's the really good bit. That's that willingness to be uncertain. Can I have the courage to sit in the uncertainty and just see what happens?
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's talk in 6 months and you can judge me.
Or we'll just do another podcast and be like, how you going? What's going on? Because it'll be really interesting to sit down again in 6 months. You know, I'm a bit lucky because I get a bit of an inside running at the moment of like, get to view this on the inside, but to sit down in 6 months as a checkpoint and be like, what's different? Are we still in the uncertainty? Like, what's actually happened? What were the challenges? Like, it's uniquely interesting, as opposed to I'm just doing the same thing as everyone else and the same thing that served me, but it still has the same problems with it.
I have a feeling, almost a knowing, that my life's going to be completely different in 6 months' time. Certainly 12 months, but it sort of feels like that 6 to 12 month period. And I don't have the faintest idea what I mean when I say that.
Unreal.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so good.
I was just talking to someone on the weekend. I'm the sort of person that I think through things when I talk. Probably not good for podcasts because I don't know what I'm going to say. But as I'm saying it is where I'm thinking, yeah, that's true. Nah, that's rubbish. I'll change that. I'll keep talking, work my way back to what I think I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But I was talking to someone on the weekend and that kind of came out. I said, I feel like I'm at a pivot point in my life where everything is about to change. My social relationships, my work,
Relationship to self.
relationship to myself, my kids, every aspect is changing in some way.
Mm.
And in most cases, it feels like it's going to be a big change and for the better. And I haven't the slightest idea like what that looks like. I just know that I'm moving in a different direction now.
Mm.
I actually do know that. And I don't know how I know that, but I do. As you know, I've just bought a house about 6 weeks ago, and it was like everything in my life up until this moment has been building towards the house. And it's not really about the house. The house is just like this
That's what it symbolizes.
checkpoint almost. Yeah. So, I needed my current work to get to this point.
Mm.
I needed the way I've been dealing with the kids to get to this point. I needed my to-do list. We could argue about that, but whatever. And it's all been leading to this point, and now I'm here, and it's not a checkpoint to continue on down the road. It's a checkpoint to stop and move somewhere else in an entirely different direction. Maybe not even on that road, sort of thing. That's how it feels. And it's both exciting. Like when I think about the positive parts of what that could mean, it's super exciting.
Yep.
And then I think, how am I going to get there to this unknown positive situation? I have no ideas except for give myself space to enable it to happen, to allow it to happen is the word.
Yep.
And that honestly scares the shit out of me when I think about that.
That's right in New Scott territory, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
Because there's every chance we do another podcast in 6 months and I'm, the fear is I'm sitting here going, well, I've been sitting in the fog for 6 months. I've earned a lot less income. I've played with my kids. That was fun. Done nothing else.
Yeah.
It's been a failure, effectively.
That's the catastrophization, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the fear bit, which I'm trying to stop. I can recognize when it comes up, and I know it's fear. So I'm not, it doesn't trick me into acting on it always anyway.
But this is the challenging part of change, because there's the fear bit, which is real. And then there's the old pattern of control and organizing and to-do lists and structure. And together, between the control and the fear, it takes some strength to sit in the middle of that and stay seated. Do you know what I mean? To not go back to old ways, or to not, want to get a new to-do list going, or to not fall into the fear and like, oh, fuck, I have to do something. But to actually sit in it with all these different forces pulling at you and be like, all right, just stay here. Let's just see what emerges. That's the bravery,
It's funny you say sitting in fear, because that was the start of my mushroom journey. I was going under, I was fighting it, I was whatever. And then when I had the first realization of, oh yeah, okay, I'm now tripping. What is this? Blackness. And I was just, it was just nothingness that I was in. And I realized that I was sitting in my own fear. And then my first thought was, what am I scared about? I'm not scared. And then my second thought was, holy shit, I'm scared of everything. A lot. My wife's got cancer.
Yep.
I've got 2 young kids and a third one on the way. I'm in a job that I don't want to be in, that I now can't leave because she's sick. I want to move forward with my career and that part of my life in some way, and I probably can't now.
Yeah.
You know, what's coming around the corner, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like the whole thing is fear.
Yeah.
And it, again, sort of sounds silly too, that I was not aware of that at the time. But I wasn't. I was just packaging it up
But I
in
think
my fishnet.
that's how the busyness serves us. The busyness keeps us distracted from really feeling and noticing those parts, the big fears, you know, because they're uncomfortable. I really think that there's a real addictive nature to busyness, because it can distract us from the big themes that we don't want to touch on because they're
Yeah.
fucking uncomfortable and scary,
Yep.
you know?
And I was not doing that deliberately to distract me. I'd even talk to people about that. Some people would say you need to keep yourself busy so you don't think about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because that is, you know, a good idea. So you don't have, in some ways, so that you don't have to ruminate on it, you know, worry about it every minute of every day. I didn't think I was someone that did that. That distracted myself out of my feelings. But again, as I said, I'm very good at this. So maybe, that was just it. I was so good at it that I didn't even realize that I was doing it.
Yeah. So if we start to put a bow in this, I'm just thinking on a practical sense, like what I'm hearing is this willingness to sit in the uncertainty and without knowing, like, what does that look like on a practical basis?
This is the bit that I haven't solved yet. I have a few ideas. One of them, I want to read more. So, sort of to your example, I want to find that 3 hours of indulgence. And I want that to happen regularly, where I just have time to read. And write is the other thing. I want to start writing. That's another message that the universe just keeps throwing in my face, and I keep ignoring it. So what's that going to do for me? No idea. But I know that I need to start writing. And I'm going to I have to get rid of the to-do list. And that even, I'm almost shaking just saying that. That's how crazy that situation is.
To get you off the crack.
Yeah, exactly. It'll lose the crack. That's so good.
Have a to-do list intervention.
Yeah. And I don't know what that looks like, because there's a lot of layers to that for me. We haven't talked about fear of missing out. That's a big thing for me. And I think the list has something to do with that too. There might be something on that list that I wrote 5 years ago that's very important to me. I've just forgotten about it. And if I just scrap it now, I'll lose it. I'll miss out on that thing. So I'm going to have to find a process for how I go through it. And I've got some ideas around that.
Or you could just screw it up and throw it out.
Or I could just screw up and throw it out. Easier said than done.
It's like raw dogging it. It's just like, all right, I'm going to do the hardest thing first.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's going to be a combination of things, of those things.
Yeah. But it's also doing all these little things with a little bit of awareness, going, oh, how did that feel? What came up? Is there a story in there that I want to hang on to? That? Like what's actually happening in the process of doing it?
And do it with intention.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, there's a few other practical things about just stepping back a little bit from my current work. But I think they're the three main ones. Reading, writing, deleting. Getting rid of the to-do list. So then my day looks like nothing is planned, is what I'm thinking. Or hoping. And obviously there's going to be the odd appointment that must be made, and there's always the kids' stuff that always needs to be done. But in between the have-to-dos will be space. Where I can do what I want in any given moment.
and see what emerges.
And see what emerges. Yeah.
Let new Scott trust his intuition and see what pops up.
And yeah, that if you got any better ideas, let me know, because that's as far as I've come.
I think it's a perfect, I think the control part is going to be wanting to, plan the steps, and that gets back to that same thing.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
The control part is like, let's write a list about how to get rid of your list. Thanks, idiot.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the opposite of the thing that I normally do? Okay, let's go there. Let's just.
You know what? That's actually part of it. My initial thought is do this, and then I pause.
Yeah.
This is part of my daily routine. Pause and go, maybe it's a bit George Costanza-ish. What if I did the opposite of that?
Yeah.
What would that look like? And usually for me, it's about doing nothing.
Good question.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful question. All right, man.
Thank you, mate.
I really appreciate your willingness to be uncertain on this podcast. I think it's been a nice little microcosm of what's actually happening in your life. No structure, no questions, we'll just see what happens. And I think what we said out when I sat in the deck when you first got here was like, it'll be what it'll be.
It could have gone any number of directions. But I trust that it was meant to go this way.
Yeah, we just weaved our way where it felt like we needed to weave it.
And I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate your honesty and your depth. So thank you for both of those things, because I value those in humans and I really appreciate it in you. So thanks. And it's one thing for me to just have that as, friend, but to come on here and to make it public is a whole nother scenario. So I appreciate that willingness to step into that. So thanks, man.
You're very welcome. Thanks, mate.
And we'll see you in 6 months. Hey, before you head off, I just wanted to say thanks for listening to that conversation. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate if you followed the podcast on Spotify, left a review, or even just left a comment and let me know what you got from the podcast. Those little bits of interaction mean a lot. We're not doing any promo or ads, or we're not selling anything on this podcast. So the goal is just to get these conversations into more people's ears. So if you've got a spare 30 seconds, really appreciate those little steps that help this grow. Okay, we'll see you in the next one.